welcome viewers. I am Pia and you're watching NewsX. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump's steep 50% tariffs on Indian goods have come into force weeks after Washington slapped an additional 25% penalty over New Delhi's Russian oil and arms purchases. The move puts India among the world's most heavily targeted economies. Denmark has summoned the US chargé d'affaires in Copenhagen after accusing Washington of attempting to interfere in Greenland's affairs. The Danish foreign minister has stated that any external meddling in the kingdom's internal matters is unacceptable, stressing close cooperation with Greenland's government. China's foreign ministry has urged Washington to end what it called the groundless harassment, interrogation and repatriation of Chinese students. Beijing has emphasized that it hopes the US will act on President Trump's commitment to welcome Chinese students. The IDF claims that the double-tap strike on the Al Nasser hospital, which killed at least 20 people, was aimed at a camera positioned by Hamas. Now, in response, Hamas has slammed the IDF's report as baseless. Tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets in Israel on the day of disruption. Families of hostages are staging protests in front of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office. Meanwhile, Netanyahu has emphasized on continued offensive in Gaza until the end of Hamas. US President Donald Trump is set to chair a key meeting on Gaza at the White House later today. Meanwhile, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar will also be in Washington to discuss post-war Gaza plans. Donald Trump has yet again threatened Russia, indicating economic sanctions may be implemented if Russian President Vladimir Putin fails to agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine. A new poll shows a majority of French citizens want the parliament to dissolve and fresh elections to be held. The finding comes as Prime Minister Bayrou faces a confidence vote over his proposed budget cuts. All right, viewers, those are the headlines, and our top focus remains as to what is transpiring in the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that Russia is sending negative signals regarding diplomatic meetings and future negotiations. He stressed the urgent need to organize discussions among world leaders in order to establish clear priorities and timelines for Ukraine's security guarantees. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Ministry of Energy has reported coordinated Russian attacks overnight targeting critical energy and gas infrastructure in 6 regions. Minor damage has occurred in Poltava and Sumy, disrupting power and gas supplies. A drone strike hit a key substation in Sumy, leaving much of the city and industries without electricity. In Poltava, attacks on gas facilities caused fires and outages. Poltava and nearby Kharkiv host Ukraine's main gas production sites. The energy firm DTEK confirmed severe damage to its Donetsk enrichment plant, with the building destroyed and key equipment damaged as well. The ministry condemned the strikes as energy terrorism targeting civilian infrastructure. Meanwhile, in another significant development, Ukrainian military officials have confirmed that Russian forces have crossed into the eastern industrial region of Dnipropetrovsk. This marks the first large-scale Russian attack in the area. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces say they stopped the advance. The incursion signals an escalation in Moscow's attempts to push deeper into Ukrainian territory. This is, of course, the latest that we're tracking as far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. We're learning that Russia now claims to have targeted energy and gas infrastructure. Ukraine's energy ministry has reported of Russian attacks targeting critical energy and gas infrastructure in 6 regions, including Poltava and Sumy, disrupting power and gas supplies. A drone strike hit a key substation in Sumy, leaving much of the city and industries without electricity. In Poltava, attacks on gas facilities caused fires and outages as well. All of this comes as Ukrainian military officials confirmed that Russian forces have crossed into an industrial region in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukraine claims that it has stopped the advance, it has stopped the incursion in Moscow's attempts to push deeper into Ukrainian territory. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast this afternoon is Dr. Vipul Saxena. He's a defense expert joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for speaking to NewsX World. Significant developments have been taking place in the Russia-Ukraine war over the last 24 hours. Ukraine claims that Russia has now attacked critical gas and energy infrastructure. And this all comes as US President Donald Trump has now threatened Putin with sanctions. Do you think Russia is going to back down? Will it come to the negotiating table or not?
See, firstly, I would like to remind the viewers about a few days ago, this is when this peace talks were about to take place in Turkey. At that time also I said that both the countries are not serious about coming to table for peace, but there is some pressure because of that they are coming to table. But then by looking at their actions and attitude, I don't think they are ready for compromise or coming to the peace table. And I think in this whole process, the biggest defeat I would say is of Donald Trump, who has been claiming and who has been, making all efforts to bring peace between Ukraine and Russia. But from both the sides, both have been very, very aggressive countries, and they've been attacking their key installations. Like 2 days back, Ukraine attacked on Russian nuclear installations. After that, what Ukraine can expect? It cannot expect a peace talk. It definitely has to be ready for much more lethal attack than some kind of peace solution or peace proposal. So I don't think Russia will buckle down under any kind of pressure, because Russia very well knows, and Trump has openly said that we are selling the arms to Ukraine. And I think in that scenario, Trump himself has made a party to Ukraine, then becoming a mediator for the peace.
And speaking of Trump's aspirations in order to ensure that a peace deal comes through, there was, of course, a lot of buzz around whether Budapest would be chosen as the location or not. Ukraine, of course, has its own contentions as far as Budapest is concerned. Meanwhile, there's a lot of murmur now about one of the cities in one of the NATO ally countries being chosen, even Turkey, even one of the Gulf countries. There's a lot of outreach that is taking place even to Turkey and the Gulf countries. Do you think a trilateral can catalyze anytime soon, or will that not take place?
See, firstly, the location really doesn't matter where this talk takes place. What matters is who is mediating. A country which has interest in both the countries, and country which has influence on both these leaders personally, I think only that country will be able to bring peace. And I think historically and for the last 3 years, there have been buzz that I think Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the right person who can bring peace between these two countries, because India and Mr. Narendra Modi personally has very good personal rapport and rapport as a nation with Ukraine and Russia. So I think somewhere somebody has to bring this proposal where India or Mr. Narendra Modi intervene and try to bring peace in the region.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we track further details. We're now learning that Denmark has summoned the top US diplomat in Copenhagen over allegations of interference in Greenland. Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen has stated that Denmark remains in close cooperation with Greenland's government, but has warned that any attempt to meddle in the internal affairs of the Kingdom of Denmark is unacceptable. Danish public broadcaster, citing unnamed sources, has reported that at least 3 US citizens with ties to the Trump administration were involved in covert influence operations in the Arctic territory, though the minister himself did not confirm any names. The senior US envoy in Denmark, Mark Straw, has now been called for talks following the ministry's findings. With us on the broadcast is Dr. Vipul Saxena, defense expert. Interesting development as far as Trump's aspirations to take over Denmark is now concerned. Source-based news coming in. This is coming in from the Danish public broadcaster. It's reported that 3 U.S. citizens with ties to the Trump administration were engaged in covert influence operations in the Arctic territory. Where do you think this is headed to next? Because the people of Denmark have clearly shown their displeasure as far as the Trump administration is concerned.
See, if you remember Donald Trump's poll campaign, in that he has been openly saying that if when I come to the power, I will buy Greenland, I will annex Canada with America as the 51st state, I will annex Mexico with the United States, I will change the name of Panama Canal, and also about Gaza he commented upon. So I think if I term it a strategy, what China does of expansionism of his territories, I think Donald Trump is virtually going on the same track. He's trying to expand territory of America by money or by muscle power. I think that is what Donald Trump is trying to do. But I think NATO being involved in this whole situation, I don't think it will be so easy for Donald Trump to really put a hand on Greenland.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World today. You are shifting focus to more updates coming in. China has now rejected calls to join a possible nuclear arms reduction talks with the United States and Russia. Foreign Ministry spokesperson of China, Guo Zhekun, has now told reporters that the nuclear arsenals and security environment of the three nations are fundamentally different. He said it is neither reasonable nor realistic to expect Beijing to enter trilateral negotiations. Guo underlined that China will continue its self-defense nuclear strategy and maintain a no first use policy. He's added that Beijing's stockpile will remain at the minimum level required for national security, even as it modernizes its forces. Joining us on the broadcast is Andrew K.P. Leung. He is a strategist focusing on China's military as well as economy, joining us live from London. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to NewsX World. Interesting statement coming in from the Trump administration as far as nuclear non-proliferation is concerned. America has come out and asked China and India to reduce its nuclear arsenal. Meanwhile, we have of course seen how it's the US and Russia in particular who have the world's the lion's share of the world's nuclear arsenal. So what do you make of China's response as well as America's demands?
If you look at the nuclear warhead stockpile, the United States has about 3,000 modern nuclear warheads stockpiled. Russia has slightly more than 3,000. In fact, the two countries' combined warhead stockpile can destroy the entire world many times over, because each nuclear warhead, is multiple times in destructive power compared with the last one dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the Second World War, at the end of the Second World War. So I think the numbers really do not mean anything, really, but it's a deterrence against a possibility of a nuclear war. But of course, nuclear stockpile can act as a degree of dominance over other countries. Now, China's stockpile is about 500 compared with 3,000. As at most, it's over the next couple of years, it could reach maybe 1,000, maybe in about 10 years' time. And India's is even less. But But of course, both China and India, they like to increase their stockpile, not to the level compared with the United States and Russia, because it doesn't mean really anything. Uh, but apart from stockpile, the most important thing is how to deliver this weaponry to your enemy's territory. And that relies on intercontinental missiles. So China now has several intercontinental hypersonic missiles that can defeat a kind of intercepting technology. So China is now reasonably confident that it maintain its own defenses. Because China is not on a trajectory to conquer the world, but it needs to defend its interests, increasingly worldwide interests as its trade, investments span over the globe. Not just Asia, but in other territories like Africa, Latin America as well. And in the same way, India is rising to be a global power. It's said to be the third world's largest economy, ahead of Japan and definitely Western countries. So both countries need to defend its own economic and other geopolitical interests. Not that they would like to use the nuclear power. However, as more and more as these global powers stockpile the nuclear arsenal, the most important thing is to make sure that there's a mechanism to prevent the world descending into a nuclear confrontation. Because any kind of warfare, nuclear warfare, has a tendency to escalate. And once it escalates, it becomes a global war, and then the whole world will be destroyed many times over. It's of no benefit to anyone, to any country. So while there is a need to stockpile reasonably amount for defensive purposes, it's important to prevent the nuclear powers from direct confrontation. So these are some of the dynamics that need to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask a quick follow-up. Apart from the stockpiles being a consideration, China maintains a no first use policy. And why do you think Trump is not pursuing this instead for the United States and Russia?
Well, the United States, either under President Trump or President Biden or President Obama, has never bought into the question of no first use, because America has been enjoying its own hegemony since the end of the Second World War, and it wants to bend the whole world to its will. And then his dominance is only military, is the world's largest economy, is still leading the world top technologies, and not to mention the US dollar. So he wants to maintain his hegemony, and hence his reluctance to buy into a no first use policy. However, China wants to maintain peace. It doesn't want to conquer the world, as in the case of the United States and other European colonial powers in the past. And it wants to have a peaceful environment, a peaceful world environment, so that to enable its economy to grow. Naturally, as it grows, it will be more influence. As India grows, and India's influence would increase as well. It's only natural. It doesn't mean that it wants to. But then the most important thing to developing countries like China and India is to grow this economy, to bring more benefits to its people. But for that, it is a more peaceful environment, and hence China's policy of no first use nuclear armament policy. However, as the Western aggression grows, I think China is now beginning to recalibrate its no first use policy. Because if you said you're no first use, then that gives a window of opportunity for other aggressive powers to take advantage of.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we track further updates coming in. China's foreign ministry has now responded to Donald Trump's statements on Chinese students. He has said that the Chinese ministry now hopes that the US would follow through on Trump's statements welcoming Chinese students and stop, quote-unquote, unprovoked harassment, interrogation and deportation of Chinese students. This comes after the US president earlier said that US colleges will struggle without Chinese students amid backlash after he suggested he could let 600,000 Chinese college students into the country as part of trade talks with the economic rival. Let's in fact listen in to what the Chinese Foreign Ministry has said.
教育交流合作有助于增进各国人民之间的交往和了解。我们希望美方将特朗普总统欢迎中国留学生赴美学习的表态落到实处，停止无端滋扰、盘查、遣返中国留学生，切实保障他们的正当合法权益。
All right, there we've heard China's response to Trump's latest statements. Andrew KP Leung still with us on the broadcast. Interesting development coming in. Foreign students who study in American universities bring in a lot of money for these universities and thereby the American economy at large. Trump is, of course, trying to strike a deal with China and negotiations are underway, but it seems that he has extended an olive branch stating that he could let 600,000 Chinese college students into the country. Meanwhile, we're seeing a lot of backlash on social media as far as this is concerned, especially with Trump's voter base, the MAGA voter base. How do you think this will now proceed from here?
I think that the Chinese university students has been the greatest foreign student cohort in American universities, especially in the field of the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field. And of course, China has got obtained a great deal of benefits in terms of training its scientific manpower. On the other hand, it's bringing, as you rightly pointed out, a great deal of revenue for the American universities. However, don't forget that Trump, before his about turn of letting more Chinese students into the United States to study, in the beginning, I mean, only about a couple of months ago, he was targeting Chinese students. He wants to impose a lot of scrutiny and restrictions on Chinese students' access to American universities. He thinks that the students are stealing U.S. technology. Now it's about turn, because I think he's got better advice that the Chinese students, not only are they bringing a financial benefit to American universities, but they are going to enrich the academic ecology in terms of research. The American scientists and researchers get a great deal of benefit from interaction with China's the best and brightest. So the more of China's best and brightest visit the United States, the more they could enrich the academic ecology, and also the more they be exposed to a lot of Americans' strengths in terms of an open society, in terms of its values, and that would, of course, in turn, influence China's domestic politics. So I think it's got better advice to really open up the floodgate for Chinese university students.
All right, sir, I'd like to thank you for joining us on the broadcast today on NewsX World. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us. Meanwhile, viewers, more developments coming in. US President Donald Trump has called Harvard University to pay a sweeping $500 million settlement to restore its federal funding. President Trump has directed Education Secretary Linda McMahon during a cabinet meeting to not further negotiate with the university administration while accusing the university of being quote-unquote very bad. Trump's comments have come as a federal judge is expected to soon rule in the funding case against the Trump administration. President Trump had earlier halted $2.6 billion of research fundings to the university, which is now facing investigation on accusations of fostering anti-Semitism and foreign funding sources. In July earlier, Columbia University agreed to pay the U.S. Treasury $200 million over 3 years, as well as $21 million to resolve Equal Employment Opportunity Commission investigations. Meanwhile, September 3rd is expected to be the deadline when Harvard would be compelled to halt all federal funded projects. Joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute in Tokyo from Japan. So thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast on NewsX World as we discuss what is taking place in Trump versus Harvard showdown. This face-off has been occurring for a couple of months ever since Trump came to power. He signed a slew of executive orders. Some of his earliest targeted Harvard in particular, as well as other Ivy League universities. Earlier, we'd seen that Columbia agreed to pay the U.S. Treasury $200 million over the course of 3 years. Now, it soon seems that Harvard will also be likely to pay a sweeping settlement as well. There is a court case that is underway. Where do you see this battle headed next?
This battle between the Trump administration and the elite universities in the United States is two backgrounds. One is diplomatic background, another one is domestic background. Diplomatically, of course, they rely on the foreign student, Chinese student, in this case, Chinese student or Chinese research project with the teacher of this university is stealing the technology from the United States is a logic. And another aspect is, of course, Middle East aspect, Israel and the Israel movement inside of the university is a matter of concern because these universities rely on the foreign student and many countries do not like the Israel, but the student group is very big, bigger than the Jewish student came from the Israel or sympathy with Israel. So that's why this is a matter. These were the diplomatic aspect, but the domestic aspect is another thing. Domestic aspect, for example, some data, the Harvard Crimson or other data indicate that nearly 80% of the teachers and students was the liberal political, so simply said, this is the case of the left. So Trump administration background is, of course, right. So right people dislike the group of the left, and they dominate, nearly dominate the university. 80% is nearly dominate. So that's why they try to change the university from the liberal-dominated area to the more the right-wing lead area. So that's why this is a battle. So current leaders of the university, both teacher and student, both are the left side. And so Trump administration try to push them out is my course they want to do.
All right, Dr. Nagao, thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Viewers, more news coming in this time from France. Now, according to an IFOP poll, 63% of French citizens support dissolving the parliament and holding new elections. Now, this comes as French Prime Minister Bayrou battles to save his minority government. Bayrou's government looks increasingly likely to be ousted next month as 3 of the main opposition parties stated that they would not support him in the confidence vote, which he announced for September 8th. This was done over his plans for sweeping budget cuts. Any decision to dissolve parliament must be made by President Emmanuel Macron, and reports indicate that 51% believe Macron will not dissolve the parliament. All right, viewers, due to paucity of time, this is all that we have for this particular bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.